A pleasant day to all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, non-binary people, and everyone in between. We would like to give our warmest thanks for coming here to this day. And so we are all gathered here in one nation, in one community. We are a community. Our fellow countrymen and countrywomen of different gender and sexualities who all share the same equal rights that we do deserve regardless. Right now, up until today, gender inequality is still prevalent in our culture and our society. Women, women in particular, are still oppressed and pushed aside in almost everything. Women, our brother and sisters. We are brother and sisters of this country. We share the same responsibilities. We bear the same responsibilities. We all both fulfill our roles in this society. Women can work as hard as any man could do. Sexual organs do not limit us from our skills and capabilities, and we are not defined by those. I have read once a paper of Asian Development Bank that women here in the Philippines, the estimated proportion of the annual earnings of a woman compared to a man is at less than 60%. Could you imagine that? This gender pay gap is what delimits us, our country. It hinders our progression as a human, as a fellow Filipino. Women today face more discrimination than just that. Companies. Companies of different industries even go as far as rejecting women applicants. And for what reason? Simply because they do not wish to pay for their employees' maternal leave should it happen. I say to eliminate this gap is to have a law that protects everyone, and of course not just women, from these kinds of discrimination. A gender equity law that protects everyone regardless of their sex or gender identity, be deprived from their rights as a beloved citizen of this country. Folks, we shall learn to end this toxic demeanor. We shall unlearn these habits and customs. We shall change for the progression and growth of our country. For the progression of our country, for the growth of our country that is evident in raw materials and resources needed for the production of different products. We people of the Philippines must take care of our motherland. Neglecting our country's problems, the waste problems, the pollution. Ladies and gentlemen, the illegal activities being conducted, it greatly affects the nature in a very negative way, which affects the environment of the country, which then affects the people of the country. We shall be the caretakers of our motherland, for it is our home. It is ours to take care of. My fellow Filipino, planting a tree in a treeless neighborhood, my people can make a huge difference to the environment. Did you know that the highest recorded temperature of an area in the Philippines is 52 degrees Celsius? Could you imagine how hot that must have been? Well, the people of Dagupan City know. My fellow Filipinos, climate change is not what we should establish to grow in our country. Let us diminish pollution by starting with the basics. Let us have everyone plant trees. Let us regrow our forests. Let us abolish illegal miners, loggers, and hunters who depletes the population of animals who make great contribution to the continuation of life in nature. Let us all come together and be a part of change so that our fellow Filipinos who are bound to get hit by the storm would not smile from the pain, but rather smile from the relief that the damage the storm had brought was weaker than it should have. Let us not romanticize our fellow Filipinos' resiliency, but rather help them have their burden lessened. And thank you so much, everyone. And now I would like to invite my fellow panelists Jun Do, Teves to speak. Thank you.
Part of what our generation would face is the challenges on making sure that we have honest, responsible, and non-corrupt government. If this does not happen, economic development is not going to happen in our country. For many years, corruption has prevailed here in the Philippines. It's time that we start to take a stand. Right now, the people on the rural areas, the agricultural, are struggling. If they stop, we are all bound to be doomed. The country would be doomed. Children, especially the teenagers, the hope of our country, their life are being misled. They become exploited with drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, and especially early teenage pregnancy. We need to teach them, give proper guidance. It is crucial that we think of the continuity of the future generation of Filipino people, but not only for the future generation of the Philippines. We need to give our hearts to the future generation of the world. Right now, in Afghanistan, there has been a terrorist attack. More than 51,000 civilians were killed. 3,500 coalition soldiers died, and 20,000 US soldiers are injured. We are reminded that if we do not work together as a country, as a world, this be stolen by the wrong hands. For the safety of the children, we the Filipinos will have to work in hands together with nations and in pursuit of supporting each other's developments.
Hello and welcome. It has been an honor and a privilege for me to be explaining about the predicament during the COVID-19 pandemic. I value your time and I would appreciate it if you would support me all throughout this campaign. We are not here to propagate misinformation and misunderstand one another. Rather, we are here to educate and to help one another. It has been a difficult year for us since the epidemic broke out last year and still continues today. It is difficult to live in a society that is at war against an enemy that they can't see, yet still makes our lives difficult. Despite the fact that the Philippines is not one of the top 10 nations to have the highest numbers of illness and deaths due to COVID-19, we are still victims because we have lost jobs, we have lost so many opportunities, we struggle to feed our families, and education has been difficult for most of us. This is not a laughing matter. We have lost 43,000 people and over 2.8 million cases of COVID-19. But still, the Philippines is fighting against this pandemic. And the Philippines is known to have the world's longest lockdown, which prevented the spreading of the disease in the Philippines. Vaccines are also being distributed to the Filipinos today. And we may have face-to-face classes next year. But until then, health is our main priority. Filipinos should be aware that the pandemic is still out there and is still present. And we have to maintain social distancing if we are at crowded places like malls or markets. We have to put on our face masks or face shields. And we have to stay hydrated. And most importantly, We have to stay clean. The Philippine government is doing everything possible to secure the safety of the country and also its future. Now let's move on to the next topic. Education is very important in a child's life. Well, indeed in the lives of everyone. Whether or not we are at school, we still tend to learn from the things around us. Educational reform. Educational reform is very crucial in a student's life, since it not only helps them learn, but also helps them understand their passion and helps them decide what they want to become or want to do to their future. The goal of educational reform is to improve the quality of the education of a country. For example, K to 12. K to 12 is a type of educational reform that was given to the Filipino students to improve their skills and for them to become more open to academic instructions. I myself once thought that I was ready to enroll to college after high school. But then I realized that I wasn't, because I had difficulties in senior high school. And what more if I enrolled to college straight away? Therefore, educational reform is very important in our lives. Education can be difficult. We may feel as if we will never be able to learn. But we must have faith in ourselves. And we must not see ourselves as second-class citizens because we are more than that. How can you soar if you are nailed to the floor? Jonathan Larson stated in his song. It is acceptable to be terrified in failing in school, because I was too. So will you. Educational reform offers us many opportunities to learn and to grow. And we should be thankful. We should be grateful to have access to this. And the last thing I wanted to say, educational reform. We must not take this for granted. That is all. Thank you.